Hey guys, so I want to hop on and talk a little bit about how we can shift our reality just by shifting our mindset, by shifting our beliefs, by shifting the thoughts that we think on a regular basis. Now, I know for a lot of people, this is kind of where things can get sticky because it's hard for us to imagine that we can literally change our lives by simply our thoughts, right? This is where kind of neuroscience and psychology cross into more like the woo-woo space, and people get a little confused and a little lost about kind of what's true and what's not, what works, what doesn't. So I wanted to talk about kind of just the more kind of like science, neuroscience, psychology-backed basics of our thoughts and how our reality is created. And maybe that will help kind of you realize how thoughts really can shift the way we perceive the world around us. So when we're talking about kind of like basics of neuroscience, this kind of comes from the work of Csikszentmihalyi, the book Flow, if you've ever read it. So he talks about how every second of every day, our brain is bombarded with about 2 million pieces of information. So every second, we're hit with 2 million pieces of information, but our brain can only process about 134 pieces of information per second. So out of the 2 million pieces of kind of like data that are coming at your brain on every second by second by second throughout your day, 2 million come at you. You can only process 134 of those 2 million pieces of data. That in itself is crazy. I don't think we realize how much is happening around us that our brain just can't process. So what our brain does is it sifts through the 2 million pieces of data and decides what's important and what's not. And that's how it gets to that 134 pieces that we actually process and internalize. So how does it do that? How does it get to that 134? Like, how does it go through that filtering, that sifting process? Well, it goes through that process based on the beliefs you have, the stories you tell, the thoughts in your head, the emotions you feel, your attitude. Basically, your brain is always looking for evidence to further support that which you believe to be true. That makes sense, right? If we believe something to be true, obviously we're going to be looking for ways to support that, even if that's a negative. So if we have a belief that there is never enough, when we are presented in any given situation and there's evidence of there being abundance and evidence of there being lack, our brain is going to latch on to the lack and filter out the abundance. So your brain is constantly looking for evidence to support the beliefs that you hold to be true. So when you think about it that way, you've got 2 million pieces of data coming at you every second. You can only process 134 pieces of that 2 million per second, and your brain filters it based on your beliefs. This is where, this isn't woo-woo, this is just basic science, basic psychology and neuroscience of understanding how the brain works, how it processes information, and how we perceive the world around us. Now, kind of a good example of this is how you can have two people experience the same situation, like be at the same event or something like that, and have two vastly different experiences and perceptions of what happened. And that's because two people are going to have two completely different filtering processes, right? Of the 2 million pieces of data that are hitting each of them at every second during that experience, each of them are going to pull out a different 134 pieces to actually process, to actually internalize. So that means they can experience essentially the same thing, but come out of it with two very different perceptions of what in fact happened. So this is where things get a little bit interesting. So basically, what we view as the world around us is just a filtered interpretation of what our brain has processed compared to what actually is happening. It's like we kind of live in our own illusion, our own perception of what's happening around us based on our beliefs, based on how we filter the world around us. So when you start thinking about it that way, it really seems quite simple, right? If we begin to shift our beliefs to make sure that we are being supported by a positive, fulfilling belief system, then we're going to start filtering the world around us completely different. So another example is, you probably know someone in your life who has a tendency to be a little negative. Maybe they're someone who always says things like, nothing works out for me. Nothing goes well for me. I'm really unlucky, right? They have this very negative belief system around luck, around how things go for them, and really feel like they're a victim to their situation. Now, when they enter out into the world, they're going to get hit with the same 2 million bits of information as someone else who may be telling themselves, I am lucky. Opportunities always come across my path. I am so fortunate, right? So the person who considers themselves unlucky and that nothing ever good happens to them, they're going to go out and experience the world in a way that is unlucky and where nothing good ever happens to them, because their brain is going to pick out the evidence in their environment to support the thoughts, the beliefs, the stories that they have in their mind. Whereas the person who considers themselves very lucky, very fortunate, that good things happen to them often, they have a completely different perspective and perception of the world around them. So they are going to pick out the things that are positive, that are lucky. They're going to find more evidence to support the fact that good things happen to them, that they're really fortunate, that good things come across their path. So two people can be put into the exact same situation, but because of their mindset, because of their belief system, one will experience it as very unlucky, very unfortunate, whereas another one can experience it as very lucky, very fortunate. So just start thinking about that of, it's not, when we talk about like manifesting our environment or shifting our reality, it's not that I'm saying sit in your living room, close your eyes, think about a pile of money, and when you open your eyes, there's going to be a pile of money there. No, not exactly. At least I haven't figured that out yet. If I do, I'll let you all know. More so, it's about really working with the limiting beliefs that you currently hold. How can you release those? How can you shift those? How can you bring in new beliefs? Restructure your belief system so that you are in fact interpreting the world in a way that you want to live. How can you change your belief system so that you are finding evidence for what you want in your life, not what you don't want? You don't want to continue to find evidence for what you've always believed to be true, right? We have to change those beliefs in order to change the evidence that our brain is pulling out of the environment. So hopefully that's helpful. I know for me, when I learned about that concept of how we are hit with 2 million pieces of data every second, and we can only process 134 of them, that blew my mind. That made this whole idea of shifting our reality, of creating our own reality, of shifting our perspective, for me, it all clicked into place. There's nothing magical about it. It's just simple brain science, how the human brain perceives the world around us. So I hope that's helpful for you. Just start thinking about, where can you start shifting beliefs to better serve you so that you can literally change the perception, your perspective of the world around you, and therefore create an entirely different experience of life for yourself.